And we're live. Good evening. Welcome everybody to the online questions and answers session for the Whangarei District Council's long-term plan from 2024 to 2034. A council's long-term plan is a 10-year budget looking at financing, maintenance, and all the projects over the coming decade. My name is Craig, and I'm part of the communications team at Whangarei District Council. I'm your facilitator this evening, but I've got a few other people to introduce. So first of all, I just want to give a big welcome to the live audience who are joining us on the Facebook live stream. At any point, you are welcome to ask questions in the comments, and after a short presentation, we'll try to get those questions answered for you. We may also be joined live by some members of the public who are joining us directly in Microsoft Teams, which is the software we're using to host this call. So a welcome to you as well. Likewise, you're able to put questions in the chat and we'll put those questions to the panel. We've got some other members of staff on the call tonight as well. First of all, good evening to our main presenter, our Chief Executive, Simon Weston. He's joined by Revenue Department Manager, Alison Pouchot, as well as Jim Sefton, our General Manager of Infrastructure, and Tony Collins, who's Manager of District Development. I've also seen that we've got Aaron on the line. Good evening to Aaron, our General Manager of Strategy. So to start things off, I'm going to ask Simon to give his presentation, which is a general overview of the long-term plan from 2024 to 2034. Over to you, Simon.
Thank you very much, Craig, and just checking that you can hear me fine.
Sounds great, Simon. Take it away.
Right, thank you very much. Okay, welcome everybody to our online Facebook webinar. We've undertaken these webinars over the last few years for various long-term plans, annual plans, and other local government consultation that we've been running. This particular one, this is for our long-term plan 2024 to 34, and we're covering material that's part of our consultation document, and we're looking for as much feedback as we can from our community. And the submissions on this consultation document opened on the 25th of March, and they close at the 25th of this month. Now, in addition to the LTP, I'll just mention this now, we've got some concurrent consultation, and that's additional documents, a revenue and financing policy, rates, remissions and postponement policy, development contributions policy, significance and engagement policy, and fees and charges. But the main theme tonight is our LTP. Next slide, please. And so, yes, Craig said this is a 10-year plan, and we create this this plan every 10 years. However, we mainly focus on the first 3 years of the plan, and every 3 years we do a refresh, and in between those 3-year long-term plans that span 10 years, we also have annual plans as well. And we're looking for as much feedback as we possibly can. So next slide, please. So the LTP sets out our budgets, our work programs for the next 10 years, focuses on the main first 3 years of that block. The long-term plan is shaped by strategies, work that we've done with our stakeholder partnerships, our current environment and community input. And that's the process that we're in right now. Now, it's fair to say that since our previous long-term plan, the 2021 plan, we've had a significant amount of change, especially from a financial point of view. Costs have risen significantly, and we've had to recalibrate things for our funding capability. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through these slides. So, the current, next slide, please. So, as it stands, rates and income haven't kept pace with expenditure. And as you can see on the graph on the screen there, there is unfortunately a growing gap between the two. The funding challenges faced by council are not unique to ourselves, but it's a nationwide issue. No matter where you go around the country, every council and just about every individual is facing a similar issue with escalating costs. We're all facing costs and increases from general inflation, cost of servicing debt, increased insurance costs, audit costs, building products that councils buy, transportation, and so many other items. If we could go to the next slide, please. So if we have a look at just a few of these, and what we did is, along with Local Government New Zealand, we commissioned Infometrics to analyse increases in cost for local government and to target some of the areas that are significantly moving. And they generally found that costs were up around 20% across the board. And if you like, if you imagine a hypothetical situation where a council has planned to undertake 5 20 million projects worth around 100 million in their 2021 LTP, essentially they'd have to drop one of those 20 million projects to be able to afford the rest. Higher than expected cost escalation over the last 3 years has been a real challenge. And if you want to deliver all of those projects, you would need to find an extra $20 million to fund all 5 of those projects. So it's a significant challenge for all local government at this point in time. Other factors on the next slide, please. Councils are acutely aware of the need to balance the need for investment with affordable increases for our community. Unfortunately, the pressure has reached a tipping point where we've had to make some reasonably significant changes. Alongside inflation, we're also having to manage additional responsibilities handed down from central government with no extra funding to pay for them, responding to flooding and severe weather impacts, and approximately $89 million worth of damage from at least 10 different storm events that we've had over the last 18 months. A need to rebuild our roads and improve our drainage network, and to ramp up works on preparing for growth and climate resilience, and to make sure we have enough funding to keep our assets in good condition to allow for growth and reliable services. Next slide, please. So, building the budget, we're very aware that it's tough times for everyone. We're all feeling the difficulty when you go to the supermarket. Everything's costing more. You go to renew your insurance, it's costing in some cases significantly more. All these issues are a real challenge for homeowners. Also, the need to take into account, from our perspective, health and safety issues, legislative requirements, and urgent works and levels of services that our communities expect. We've also got a capital works programme, and we've had to go through that programme and reduce some of that programme by either pushing projects out or in some cases deleting projects. However, we don't believe that reducing services or cutting back on infrastructure investment is necessarily the right thing to do. And people generally tell us that they want to have more and not less capital works and or services provided by local government. So the proposed rates increase. Now next slide, please. For several years, we've had to absorb the impacts of cost escalations, and we've done that to try and keep rate increases as low as we possibly can. and we haven't increased budgets in line with much of the costs that we've seen come through. However, this has created a funding gap, and despite our best efforts to make sure that our operating costs are as low as they possibly can, a rates increase of 17.2% is needed this year. And that's to cover the costs of delivering services to support our growing district and to deal with some of the challenges that I've already mentioned. If we were to set a lower rate increase, we would also need to cut services, which wouldn't necessarily be in the best interest of our district. Next slide, please. So all councils around the country pretty much are lifting their rates. The average that Infometrics came up with across the country, and this is early indications from local government, was around 15.2%. Some are significantly above that. Some are below that figure. Ours, as I've mentioned, is 17.2%. And if you have a look at the table on the or the graph on the slide there, you'll see where we are, and that's in according to the 2023 Taxpayer Union average residential rates. So you'll see this is us, that's WDC. So we're in the kind of the bottom quarter of councils across New Zealand for their average residential rates. Next slide, please. So, before we get onto that, could I just go back onto the previous slide? So if you're having a look at the consultation document, if you have a look at page 14 and 15 of the consultation document, that will give you a little bit more about the 17.2%, and that is for year one of the LTP. Now, we've also indicated that for years 2 and 3, that's likely to be 7.5%. plus what we call LGCI, Local Government Cost Index. So that's the inflation rate that is, generally speaking, the local government inflation rate. So it reflects the types of things that local government buys. So years 2 to 3, 7.5 plus LGCI. And for the rest of the plan, years 4 to 10, 2.5% plus LGCI. Now, on the same pages, you'll also see some description narrative in regards to water rates, wastewater, and stormwater for future years. So there's a lot of really interesting information on that particular page if you are looking at your document currently. So next slide. So I would just mention debt. Debt funding infrastructure investment is where we spread costs across multiple years. It's often referred to as intergenerational debt. But we're kind of very mindful today that councils are sandwiched between historic underinvestment on the one hand and increasing interest costs on the other hand. The Whangarei District Council is in a pretty good state in regards to its borrowing compared to its peers. And in fact, this particular slide here shows the debt for the consultation document for our LTP. And basically it shows that debt will climb through to 2028-29 and then start to recede as it gets into the back end of the plan. And that puts us in a very good stead for the future to be able to afford the infrastructure and services that we'll need to provide in the future. Now, in addition to that, Council is very much focusing on making sure it's got a balanced budget. Its income and expenditure are in accord with each other, and we're not having significant expenditure over and above our income. And we also talk about everyday income versus everyday expenditure. And we want to make sure that we're not relying on capital subsidies to bolster our income artificially to get that balanced budget. I could just have the next slide, please. So building a resilient Whangarei. So we've got a tough economic climate, recovery from weather events, and the need to build resilience means this plan is focusing on looking after what we've got instead of taking on big projects unless they're legislated or needed to support growth. Some projects have been pushed out, some unfortunately planned sports fields, Carmo Library refurb, Tikabunga Shared Path, a few examples, and some have been removed from the project too, such as some of the Kepler Park upgrades, Tarewa Park refurbishment and redevelopment. We're open to including these in the LTP if the community would like us to do that, and you can by all means include your comments as to what you'd like to see put back into the plan within your submission. Next slide, please. Now, we've got three topics that we'd very much like to talk to you about. The first one is becoming a Northland Inc. shareholder. So there's narrative in the consultation document, page, I think it's 19 onwards, so 19 to 21, that looks at the Northland Inc. proposition. And what we want is feedback on whether or not we should become a shareholder in Northland Inc., which is our Northland Regional Economic Development Agency. And it's a CCO. It's partly owned by the Regional Council and the other territorial local authorities within Northland. And it's there to provide a partnership with our regional national partners, public and private, and to strengthen and grow Northland's economy. Now, at this point in time, we are not a shareholder in Northland Inc., and we're consulting on whether we should. At this point, we put in $105,000 into Northland Inc., and if we were to become a shareholder, in addition to that $105,000, we would need to increase our funding to $370 for year one and $482 for year two. And then after year two, we will make an assessment as to whether being a shareholder is paying us dividend and whether we're getting the things that we need out of Northland Inc. And if that is the case, then we will reevaluate and fund future years. But at this point in time, we're just consulting on whether we should fund and be a shareholder for the first 2 years. Now, that is currently built in to our 17.2% increase in rates. So to do this, become a shareholder and pay the additional amounts, that is included within 17.2%. And what we're consulting on is whether we should do that or not, whether we should stick with what we're doing and just continue to contribute $105,000 per year. The next item we're consulting on the next slide is the Freedom Camping monitoring and compliance funding. Now, historically, that $200,000 that goes into that has been provided by the government through MB. However, they've provided indications that they're not going to be funding us in the future. And as a result of that, we need to make a decision as to whether we're going to continue to run that program, in particular the Education Ambassador Monitoring Program that tries to make sure that Freedom Camping operates in a fashion that it doesn't create problems for others that live and move about our community. Now, if within the consultation, there's kind of two propositions. There's whether we continue to do some of this freedom campaign monitoring and compliance work, but with a reduced budget of $140,000, or whether we don't get involved in that in the future. And we're looking for your consultation and your feedback on that. Now, the impact on rates is 0.16%. So if we were to not run that program, then we could potentially reduce the rates intake, the rates increase by 0.16%, or we could spend it on something else. And you may wish to provide comment on what you do with that additional funding if we would stop that program in your submission. Right, the last one that we're looking for feedback on is commercial property options. And we're asking for your feedback on how you would like council to operate its property portfolio. We've got about $30 million that could go into a more active role with development within our district, and we could do it in a number of different ways. We could stick with the status quo, or we could have an in-house business unit. And if we was to have an in-house business unit purely focusing on this aspect and trying to do more in terms of commercial property development, then that would cost in the order of about $1.2 million, and that would increase the general rates about 1.2% from year two. Now, as an alternative to that, we could have a council-controlled organisation or a council-controlled trading organisation, and that's a little bit more at arm's length away from council. And we could have our CCO run the commercial property portfolio. And if we were to do that option, that would be in the order of about $1.34 million, which would be about 1.3% from year two. And that would put us in a more proactive position in terms of commercial development. And of course, option three is to stick with the status quo and not participate in a more proactive fashion in that commercial property area. So we're very interested in your comments on those three elements, together with anything else that you want to comment on within the long-term plan. Now, if you've got, if you could just go over to the next slide. So if you have a look at our website, www.wdc.govt.nz, have your say, you'll see the consultation document there. You'll see all the supporting documentation. You'll see the additional concurrent consultation documentation in there as well. So there's a heap of information that you can look through and peruse at your leisure. And hopefully we'll receive some feedback from you. And please send it in, and you'll need to send it in by the close of business 25th of April 2024. And if you have a look online on that website, it'll tell you all the different ways in which you can submit your feedback on our long-term plan. So that's pretty much a whirlwind visit to our long-term plan, some of the issues that we've had to grapple with and putting it together. And I, along with the panel there, are going to try and answer as many questions as we possibly can. And I'll hand over to Craig to start the ball rolling.
Great, thanks, Simon. Appreciate that. And we've got a couple of dozen, up to 3 dozen people in the live chat, so that's really good. We've had some good chunky questions come through. We'll start with some of the ones which are really the elephant in the room. The question here from John asks, why can't you keep to the 5% inflation stats? So we're seeing 5% inflation in wages, and in the private sector, private people have to live within that. Why can't councils do the same?
Great question, and I'm glad you've asked it. Basically, the costs that we're faced with as a council have risen significantly more than that. Our insurance has pretty much doubled. If we have a look at within our consultation document, and it was on one of the slides, in regards to some of the physical works that we do, like bridge building, roads and sewage and water systems, they've gone up 38%, 27% and 30% respectively. So unfortunately, we are grappling with not 5%, but significantly more than that. And over the last few years, as I've said, we've tried to absorb as much of that cost as possible. But unfortunately, over the last 18 months, couple of years, we've seen significant increases in all our contracts, to the point where, in actual fact, we're going to have to do something a bit different. And as a result of that, we've gone out with the 17.2%. I know it's not popular, but if we want to do the services that we currently provide, then 17.2% is about the minimum you can get away with. And that's for a constrained programme of works. So that isn't going to cover all the bases for what we currently do today, that's 17.2%. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Simon. I hope it does too. Relatedly, another question from the same person, asking why can't the consultation topics, there's those three sort of topics that you presented on at the end, why can't they cover the real big meaty issues of financial pressures? Why do they have to be about these small things?
Right, those three matters the council wanted specific feedback on, so they've raised those specifically. However, the rest of the document is open for feedback from everybody, particularly the 17.2%. So I've gone into quite a lot of detail in my slides to talk about the main issue, that is dealing with our increasing costs and inflation and a significant rates increase. So the three specific issues that council wanted to have feedback on doesn't diminish in any way the importance or the need to have feedback on the general rates rise.
Thank you, that's great. So we haven't quite got enough questions to group them together, so things might seem a little bit random until we get more. But I've got a question here from Andrew, who asks, what's the accountability process for substandard work, and especially on the roads?
Well, obviously we've got contractors that work for us and they're employed through contracts. There's specific performance requirements within those contracts, and staff that are administering those contracts make sure, or try and make sure, that those performance measures are met. Sometimes that's challenging circumstances, either due to the weather that we've had over recent times, or the simple fact that we're in a constrained environment, so we can't do all the work that we would ideally like to do because we can't afford to do all that work. So it's a challenging space, but it's a really fair question, and it's an ongoing piece of work to try and make sure that we not only have fair contracts that are fair to our contractors, but also that we're able to hold them accountable for the work they do. Likewise, the designs that are provided by our professional service providers or internally. And yeah, it's an ongoing piece of work to try and make sure that we get what we're paying for, but also we have to sometimes grapple with the fact that things change, ground conditions change, and sometimes we just can't do everything we want to do, and sometimes we end up with something that is not quite as good as what we would like.
Thanks, Simon. Potentially related, I have a question from Ollie, who's joining us in Teams. It begins, given the fact that we can now barely afford to cover council's core business, and that as a nation, we're already overshooting our ecological limits by a factor of 3.5. Do you think that continuing to pursue an economic and population growth strategy is still prudent for our district?
Oh, that's an interesting question and a great question. That's a national question as much as a local question. Obviously, the more scale you get within a district, the more the better services that district can have. And in the end of the day, people are coming into New Zealand, into our country, and they bring with them great skills, and we would like a share of the skills and the experiences that they harbour, and we would like them to come up here and share them and make our part of the world as prosperous and as great as what we possibly can.
Great, we might come back to that. I've got a question from Shah. She asks, what can be asked for in long-term plan submissions to do with roading? Because the outgoings seem high, the quality of work seems low. If we want to make a difference of this in the space of the long-term plan, what should we do?
That's another great question. To make a significant difference in our roading network, we would need a significant amount of additional funding. At the moment, we get 53% subsidy from NZTA, which is great, and that helps us, but we still have to find 47% to fund the works that we do. And the amount of work that's done on the road, although we're always looking for smart ways of working and efficiencies, is what we can actually afford. So if you'd like to see twice as many roads rehabbed or resealed, the reality around that is that we would have to pump more money into that. And that means we would have to ask our community for additional funding to achieve that. So it's a real challenge, because we understand that everybody's in the same position. People are struggling, and so we're trying to balance the kind of the rate intake with what we can provide the community in terms of our services. It's a careful balance, and it's pretty tricky. I hope that's probably provided the answer. It's probably the obvious answer there.
Maybe. Actually, we've got a good economic question here from Adam, who asks, since we have more dwellings now and more people are coming into the district, why aren't the costs coming down rather than going up?
That's another great question. Well, we certainly need to provide the infrastructure to provide for growth, so that's an ongoing cost. And in a lot of respects, we've got a lot of old infrastructure, and that infrastructure needs to be replaced. So you're not only providing new infrastructure to provide for growth, but you also got to look after and replace the old infrastructure too. Now, you ultimately scale provides some economic advantage and some benefit, but unfortunately, it doesn't prevent costs escalating like what we're seeing right the way across the board. And so unfortunately, we have to meet those costs with rate increases. What we do, though, is we also have development contributions. Everybody that's building things within the district, whether it be residential property or whether it be commercial property or industry, they all contribute towards the capital funding of our growth projects. So that is there. So they do contribute very much towards that. And then for forevermore ongoing, they contribute rates just like the rest of us.
Yeah, great. So what about people like Ang, who asks, might be Ange, she asks, for rural people who run their own septic systems, they don't have footpaths or street lighting, they don't see a lot of maintenance around the local bus stop, what are they getting for their rates?
That's another good question. And when I go out to rural townships and communities, I quite often get asked that. No doubt, people within the the rural areas, they come into town, they use the town services. Obviously, they wouldn't be paying the wastewater charges and drinking water charges, but they're not connected. But there's all those other services that they can use and do use. That everybody uses the road network at some point in time or another. And also during dry years, people on rainwater tanks rely on the council system for providing reliability of supply from tankered water. So in one way or another, you will use that service. But I understand the question that you raise and the challenge where you live in a road in the middle of nowhere. There's no footpaths, there's no street lighting or anything like that. So I do understand that particular dilemma.
Great, thanks.
Well, what I should also mention though, if I can, Craig, if you have a look. If you've got the consultation document open, if you have a look at page 16 and 17 of the consultation document, you'll see a whole list of different types of property and the likely increase you'll get from the general rates increase. So everything from residential property with a land value of 200,000, 400,000, lifestyle type properties at 620,000, commercial properties, industrial properties. So that, if you like, that particular page will give you a flavour, page 16 and 17, of the type of increases that you're going to see as a result of the proposed increase.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Good idea. And just to reiterate, so the long-term plans consultation document and the supporting documents, which is a really large document of hundreds of pages, they are both available on our website at www.wdc.govt.nz/LTP. Or you can navigate to it from the front page, go to Have Your Say, and then click through to the long-term plan. All of that documentation is there for people to check out whenever they want. That's also where you can make a submission online. So feel free to go there at any time during the consultation. And as Josh is demonstrating on screen now, you can find the consultation document, the supporting documents, and also have your say directly online. Now, one of the three questions they were asking specifically is about our membership to Northland Inc. Robin asks if there's some history there. Did we leave Northland Inc? What role did we have in the setting up of Northland Inc? And actually, what are the benefits if we join?
Right, and that goes back a wee way, but I see Tony's here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if Tony would like to talk about that rather than just listening to me all the time. Tony, do you want to comment about that?
Yeah, hi. So it is a good question in the sense that Northland Inc. in its current form has been in existence since about 2011. When it changed over from what was Enterprise Northland and Destination Northland. About 3 years ago, at that stage, it was a CCO with sole shareholding to the Regional Council. About 3 years ago, NRC, the Regional Council, reached out to the other councils within Northland to see if they were interested in joining. At that stage, Whangarei District Council was asked if they wished to join and become a shareholder, and it was felt at that stage it wasn't the right thing to do. Since that time, the elected members and staff have worked pretty closely with Northland Inc. and Regional Council to resolve some of the issues that they felt were preventing that entry at that stage. We feel they've been resolved now, and it would be a good time for us to join as a shareholder. I think the main advantage is the sense that we are the largest economic centre and largest district within Northland. A lot of the growth which is happening, which some of the other questioners have already spoken about, will happen in Whangarei. And for that growth to be successful, we need to be able to talk to central government about infrastructure investment, inward investment from other businesses and things with a single regional voice. And being a shareholder of Northland Inc. would enable us to do that. It also enables us to set some direction through the statement of intent and the shareholding structure to actually say, well, this is what we believe that Northern Inc should be pursuing within the Whangarei district.
Thank you very much, Tony.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. I'll just bridge over to a question from John, who asks, if money is tight, what services or projects has the council ceased or cancelled in the last year or so to try and keep rates down?
Yeah, what we've tried to do is not cancel services. It's been, we've looked at what we can potentially change, and we've looked at all manner of things, whether it be on the solid waste side, transfer stations, the way which we're running contracts, particularly in the infrastructure space, in transportation, and also in the waters. Basically, we're down to pretty much providing the minimum that a council would ordinarily provide. And so we've kind of caught ourselves between a rock and a hard place of, well, okay, now we've got to the point, if we want to save any more money, then we're going to have to stop a service. And what do we want to close? And by and large, the general feedback that we get is that our community doesn't want us to stop services, doesn't want us to close anything, doesn't want us to reduce the number of hours that we're open for various things. In actual fact, they want those services to continue. Likewise, within our operations and maintenance programs, the feedback we get is that in actual fact, we'd probably like you to do more, not less, in those programs as well. So where we've seen contracts increase in cost and materials increase in cost, we've tried to absorb as much of those costs by being as efficient as we can, or rearranging the way in which we do work, and try and get to the position where we can cover everything. But unfortunately, the last 2 years has been just too much of a stretch to be able to meet that requirement.
Thanks, Simon. We've got a.
However, I will say,
yep,
if there's a particular service that you think we should stop or reduce significantly, please put that in a submission. Send it in.
Yeah, great. Actually, a question from me, Simon. Who reads the submissions?
Oh, well, we have a team of people in council that are involved in going through the documentation and the submissions and putting that together for the council. The people that are involved in providing the service are involved in reviewing the submission that's come in and providing some advice around that, and all of that information is packaged up and then goes to the council, and the council reviews that information and then goes through a decision-making process as to whether they want to make a change to their consultation document or not.
Okay, that makes sense. We've got a question here about wages. Is that something council's increased its spending on, and has it increased more than inflation? Does the LTP increase it even more?
Wages are an important matter, and they're important for everybody. We still need to provide the services that we do provide, and what we do is we go to a company that many businesses, both local government and private businesses use, and they provide information on where salaries are for particular types of roles. And so we use that information to be able to judge where our salaries should be and whether indeed the salaries for those particular roles are moving or whether they're not moving, and we adjust our funding for our salaries according to that. and also performance of the individual. So both of those components are brought into play. But yeah, we've seen across the country a significant rise over the last 2 to 3 years in wages in all sorts of industries, and local government is in exactly the same position as other industries in that we employ planners, engineers, we employ people that are involved in administration, accounts, and you need to make sure that you're reasonably competitive with your salary to make sure that you've got people to do the work you need to do, and also that they are skilled and have the right sort of qualifications to be able to do the role that they need to do. And it's not just a salary matter. Trying to find good people is a real challenge, and trying to keep good people is a real challenge as well. And if you're talking to anybody in business, they'll say the same thing. It's been a difficult time.
Thanks, Simon. The suggestion to think of things that we might save money on has activated people a little bit. So I've got a few topics on that. So here's a question. Can we save money on not supporting the Hundertwasser Arts Centre? I had a quick look in the LTP documents about it just now, and I couldn't find the word Hundertwasser in the supporting documents or the consultation document. Is it part of the LTP, and how much is budgeted for that?
Well, I just wonder whether Tony wants to answer that, or Aaron. If not, I will. Are you going to? No, nobody's coming on with that. So basically, there's a trust that runs the Hundertwasser Arts Centre, and at the moment it's operating with some funding from council that councils provide, but also on part of an underwrite. And I suppose if the Hundertwasser continues to struggle and can't cover all of its costs with the income that it's receiving, then that will be a decision for council to make in regards to how much funding would need to go into the Hundertwasser Arts Centre to keep it going.
I'll just interject, sorry. We had a slight technical problem with Aaron. We didn't get a test in before, but that's been solved now. Would you like him to take over?
Oh, yeah. Aaron, I hope you heard what I said, and if you wish to contribute.
I missed the question. Sorry, Simon. What was the question, Craig?
Sorry, it's can we save money by not supporting the Hundertwasser Arts Centre? And since it doesn't appear in the LTP documents, how much is on the table to save there?
Sure. Great question. So essentially, we have with the Hundertwasser Centre, we've got a commitment. We've got 1 year left of guarantees to kind of back any extra financial support that they require. We're kind of in a tight spot with the Hundertwasser Centre. We want to see it succeed. We want to see it do well. We know that its potential as a world-class kind of visitor centre, that it attracts visitors. Obviously, the last few years haven't supported that with the pandemic, etc. However, that said, as per most of our CCAs, it would be a saving of about $300,000.
Sorry, Aaron. Your microphone is a little crumbly there. Could you just give us the last part of that again, please?
Take my camera off, and that might help perception. So we're looking at that would be a savings if we weren't to support the Hundertwasser Centre. It would be as per other CCAs, it would be about $300,000.
Great, thanks. So I'm just repeating that Aaron said the saving would be about $300,000. Another suggestion here, would it be an option to change rubbish and recycling collections from weekly to fortnightly, potentially reduce costs and encourage people to make an effort to reduce their waste?
Yes, that would reduce costs. Recycling, unfortunately, does cost us quite a lot of money to be able to operate. We would have to just make sure that the community, that's actually what the community wants. It's quite a challenging space. When you have a look at all of the rubbish that gets collected on a weekly basis, there would have to be a reasonable change in the way in which people operate. Otherwise, they would be there'd be significant amounts of rubbish to be able to, or what the contractor would have to deal with on a fortnightly basis. I think at the moment it's quite a challenge for the contractor sometimes to deal with the amount of rubbish that they're picking up. But that would reduce the amount of our overall cost in solid waste space. And if you think that in actual fact that's the direction that council should go, then please put that in the submission and send it through.
Thanks, Simon. We've got a question from Cheryl. Maybe you understand this. Sorry, I've lost the context, but she says, this is Cheryl Mai, by the way, a familiar name to some.
Hi, Cheryl.
She asks, can you explain where the $30 million you referred to comes from so everyone can understand?
Oh, that's probably to do with the commercial property portfolio, and whether we should have a business unit that runs our commercial portfolio, or whether we should have a CCO or CCTO. The 30 million relates to a package of properties that are in such an order that they can actually be within a commercial portfolio and be treated as such. A lot of councils' properties that it's got interest in is either on long-term lease, or that there's some component of them that makes it really difficult to be able to have the kind of the freedom to do what you need to do if we were operating a commercial property portfolio. So when you take out all of the properties that have got some form of incumbents on them, then it only leaves you with about $30 million to play with in terms of the other properties. And the question is, do we put that into a CCO, which will be arm's length from council? And that's probably a more proactive and forward-thinking way of dealing with it, or should we have a business unit with specialists in council dealing with it? And that would still be a lot more proactive than what we currently do today, or indeed should we just continue to deal with property and property matters in the same fashion that we do today, which is somewhat passive?
Thanks, Simon. And extending on that, is an option to sell it altogether? Bring in $30 million?
You could, but you also lose the revenue side of that, and also the opportunity to leverage better development around the district with that. So the commercial property portfolio is there hopefully to not only just make an ongoing fund for council, but also to help develop parts of our township and district in a fashion that we would like, that would be of benefit to all of our residents.
Yeah, great, thanks. I've got a few questions coming in that are about sort of the top line for our revenue and our economic position. So the first part of this question, let's try this. What is the total revenue of Whanganui District Council?
Right, I knew somebody was going to ask me that, and I was looking for the number, and I don't have it on the top of my head, unfortunately. But Alison would.
Maybe she does. Maybe we can actually just simplify it a little bit. What is our total rates revenue, Alison?
It's about 100 million is our total rates revenue. Yeah.
Got it. So numbers like 30 million are pretty significant assets for an organisation of our size.
Yes.
Got it. And we've got a question from Ash, which says, are we in a deficit? Are we in debt? If so, how much debt are we in?
We've got a graph that was in the presentation. If you put that back up. So you'll see the kind of the starting position for the LTPs around that $250 million debt, and it peaks at kind of $375 million debt, and finishes off at the back of the plan under $200 million. So that's the profile of expenditure. So that's everything. So that's all the operations, that's all the capital spend, and that's the predicted position that we would be in if we went out with the and followed the financial objectives that we've set ourselves, and also which includes the 17.2% general rates increase right at the very start of this plan.
Yeah, got it. So following on from that, how much are we paying in interest on debt of that size?
I'm just wondering if, I don't think, Alison, you'd have that figure on top of your head, do you?
I imagine it changes pretty frequently with interest rates.
It does. I mean, we get quite.
Sorry, I don't. Let me just look it up for us.
Yeah. While you're looking it up, Alison, we borrow a lot of our funds from the LGFA, Local Government Funding Agency, and we get pretty good rates. All of local government gets pretty good rates for its borrowing, but nevertheless, it does add up in interest, and that's why we've looked very hard at this, and we're wanting to try and manage as much as possible the overall debt by the end of the plan down if we possibly can.
So I just got word from Delise, the finance manager, and it's 11.8 million, the interest cost in the first year of the LTP. So
that would be 24-25. So that in essence will increase through to 2028, that amount of interest, and then it'll come down the other towards the back end of the plan.
But that will also depend on interest rates, right?
That's based on today's mix of interest rates that we have.
Great, thank you. And while we're right in the nitty-gritty of the accounting here, a question from Merv, who asks, last year's increase in rates was partially justified by an increase to depreciation of assets. Is that still the case? And what happened to that money?
Yeah, and we've got that to still fully quantify as to where we sit with depreciation. We've made an assessment within the plan, or the consultation document, but there'll be a final calculation for the actual plan itself. So that's a challenging space, overall depreciation. Infrastructure costs have gone up significantly, so that has a big influence on your depreciation. And so hopefully it won't change too much, but yeah, it's that's a real challenge, that is.
Can Can I just come back with all the numbers so that we've got a better information? First of all, you asked what the rates were for next year. So the general rates are 101 million. The targeted rates are 45 million. So targeted rates is water, wastewater and Hikurangi Swamp. And then we've got some other income. So that brings it up to 192.5 million for next year, what we plan our income to be. And our finance costs for next year are planned to be 11.8, and they go, the top level is 20.8 million in year 6, down to 13.6 million in year 10.
Great, thank you very much for that, Alison.
That's awesome. Really appreciate it, Alison. And you can hear that there's other staff members scrambling in the background to help answer these questions as well. So really appreciate it. I am going to move on from these revenue questions, though, unless we get significantly more of them. But I will just note this question from John, who asks, does the consultation document show budgets by department and what that spend is for, so we can suggest things to save in the submissions that we make?
If you go into the supporting documentation, then you'll probably find the information that you're after in the supporting documentation.
I'll just add in that all the financials are done by activity. So we've got 12 activities which detail all the revenue and the expenses in the capital's funding impact statement as well. So you can see everything for each activity. So you have transportation, parks and recreation, water, wastewater, stormwater, coastal systems, flood protection, solid waste, planning and regulation, go back up again, governance and support services.
And the document that's on the screen at the moment is the one you want to go to get into all that detail.
Yeah, I just want to point out as well that this proposed financial strategy document is over 400 pages long, and that's all what we're consulting on here. So everyone's quite welcome to do a deep dive, really get into the nitty-gritty, and if you think you've found opportunities to save money, then you can make a submission, and that's going to be seen by staff and councillors who might be able to action it. I'm going to get on to a couple more sort of novel questions, but we might be getting close to a sort of last call for questions here. If we don't have any, then we have to come to a close. But I know that there are a couple that have been that haven't been answered yet. So first of all, from Robin, she asks, what's council going to do about the homeless issue, and is the solution going to be part of this long-term plan?
We're working with the government agencies on this particular issue. It's a real challenge, and it's one that we've been talking to, well, not only the government agencies, but also local government New Zealand as well about. And many townships, unfortunately, around New Zealand are facing similar problem. And nobody's found the silver bullet to sort this problem out. What we are wanting to do is to treat everybody with respect, try and resolve matters on a case-by-case basis, but also try and work with our central government agencies to be able to provide solutions that will provide better ongoing outcomes in this space. It's not local government's normal work, so that kind of the skill base and all the supporting services and care that you generally need to be able to deal with the homeless, we don't have. That's not our skill set. It's the government agencies that have got that, and so but we respect the fact that it's our district, it's our town, and our community that are sometimes challenged by this, and so all of us will continue working to try and find a solution that works for everyone.
Appreciate that. Thanks. I've got a good one here from John Snow. He says, if you're looking for things to sell or ways to raise money, why don't you sell the massive central headquarters and instead build local offices that serve smaller parts of the community? Was that something that was looked at when the Te Iwitahi, the Civic Centre, was being built?
At various points in the past, it's been looked at whether we should have more council centres dotted about the district, and by and large, that tends to end up with quite a fragmented business and quite a challenge to look after and operate. Before we built the current building that we have, Te Iwitahi, we had staff in a number of buildings around town, and that was quite a challenge to try and manage and operate. And also the rental charges was reasonably high for those areas that we had to rent. Forum North itself, unfortunately, Forum North has seen a better day, and every time it rained, everybody had to run about with buckets collecting water. It was it's had its challenges, and it's probably had its better day, even though I've got a kind of a fond spot for it. So council decided to build a purpose building, and I have to say, having all the staff in that building has been brilliant. It's good for operational requirements, and it's a great venue for communities and for the council and for council meetings, and it's worked very well, and I look forward to a long future. It's a long-term investment that council has made.
Thanks, Simon. I'm going to add my 2 cents here, which is that as a council staffer, that building has been an absolute game changer in terms of the service we can provide to customers. We did a survey among staff recently, and one of the things that we found was that people have seen the usefulness of meetings shoot through the roof, basically because it's easier to run into people in the hallways or grab them at their desks and find out what you need to know instead of calling a meeting about absolutely everything and inviting everyone that might know the answer. So we can definitely already see that we're getting value from money from that.
You're quite right. Staff collaboration has improved significantly. Thank you for that.
We've seen a sort of surge of numbers, and then they dropped off, and they're starting to pick up again. So for those that are just joining us, we're almost running out of questions here. This is an opportunity for you to ask your questions in the comments, and we can put it to the panel. But unfortunately, if we run out of questions, then we'll bring the evening to a close. We do have a question here from Danielle, who asks, could we bring in recycling machines that exchange cans and bottles for cash, like they have in Australia? Maybe that would reduce recycling costs.
That's the container something or other scheme has been talked about by the previous government, and is currently kind of being looked at as to whether that's the way to go. At this point in time, we don't have that Australia has, but it is being considered as to support recycling, and I suppose we, off the back of that, we would have to change the way in which we recycle as well our containers.
Great. Well, my final call for questions did bring in a couple, so I'll ask this one from Ryan first, who asks, can we change the constitution of Whangarei District Council to only fund core services and to never raise rates above CPI? And I'll add to that, what would happen if we did that?
Okay, first of all, please put that into your submission, send it in. If we only raised rates above CPI, at CPI, then unfortunately, as I've explained previously, we wouldn't be able to afford the services that we currently provide. So we would stop doing a number of operational services, and we wouldn't provide them anymore. And we would have to cease building as many things. So you'll probably see the roading network start to deteriorate further. Likewise, water, wastewater, you'll see reduction in recycling and solid waste management. And you'll probably see an end to the grants that council provides to the community groups. There'll be all manner of things that would slowly diminish as our ability to pay diminishes. So if you want a council that provides modern services, provides modern infrastructure and deals with the blows that we get, whether that be through inflation or whether it be through climatic types of change, then if you're not keeping up with the cost of the materials that you use, then you're going to be diminishing services.
Thanks, Simon. I've got a question from Annette. She asks, have we explored alternative revenue sources, like using assets for advertising or any other sort of fundraising initiatives?
Yeah, occasionally initiatives such as those crop up. They don't bring a lot of revenue in for us, but we do look at opportunities, and sometimes the locky-docky for cycles, locking up cycles, we're managing to find a workable deal with them. I guess that's an example of that. So yes, we're always on the lookout for something that will bring in additional revenue. But like I've already said, it's generally speaking small amounts of money that compared to the hundreds of millions of dollars that we end up having to kind of have to run the business. So it doesn't plug that many holes, but at least it helps.
Yeah, great. I've got another question from Cheryl Mai. She's asking about freedom camping, which is topic number 2 in the consultation.
Yep.
We've put forward 2 options. We could keep the freedom camping monitoring and compliance service at a slightly reduced level as option 1. Option 2, we could stop this service due to no external funding being available from government. She asks, what are the chances central government just continue the funding and we get to continue the Ambassador in Education monitoring program? Well,
that's what we ideally would like to see happen. That isn't the indication that has been provided to us from MBIE. So it's an unfortunate position, but that's the position we're in. If that was to change, then it would be great. So we don't see that that's going to be the case at this point.
Thanks, Simon. I think I'm going to call this the last question. It's a really interesting question from Ollie, who asks, with more pressure than ever on our infrastructure and the issues that we've faced recently, what are we preparing for if the next major cyclone or flood or pandemic or disruption of some sort hits us?
Yeah, that's a fair question. And at some point in time, we will end up with similar storms to Gabriel. We're trying to build back infrastructure in a more resilient fashion. That's a real challenge in a constrained environment like what we've got with our LTP at this point in time. But nevertheless, we're trying to organise our contracts such that we provide better stormwater management, and we put in the types of culvert systems and infrastructure that hopefully will be more resilient in the future during those events. But there's no doubt about it. With whether you believe in climate change or not, so some of the storm events that we get are very, very destructive, and they unfortunately cost councils and the government a significant amount of money. It takes a while to recover from that. If we can build back our infrastructure so it doesn't have the same type of impact as what we've had previously, then at least that will help us recover in a quicker fashion. And in some respects, if you have a look at what NZTA are doing at the moment with the Brynderwyns, they're trying to, even though it's for a short period of time, 5 to 7 years, they're trying to provide the link across the Brynderwyns in a more robust fashion, so that when we do get these storm events, we don't have the road being out of action for a significant period of time.
Thank you, Simon. A very sobering thought. I think this brings us to the close of the meeting. So again, thank you very much, Simon. Thank you for your visual aids, Josh. And thank you for your support, Alison, Tony, Aaron, and the staffers that have been busy in the background to try and provide those people with the information that people have been seeking tonight. So for the viewers on Facebook, I'm going to close this out with a video that takes a look at your average day in the life in Whangarei and highlights the services that are provided by Council. The video for this is going to be available immediately after the session on Facebook, so you can rewind and take a closer look if there's anything you missed. And we'll make that available on our website in the next few days as well. So is there anything anyone would like to add as a final thought?
Thank you, Craig, and thank you, team, for helping support tonight. And thank you, community, for taking part in this weblink and asking all the questions. And we look forward to receiving your submissions. So thank you very much. That's me. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. I think just hold on a moment. Okay, I can confirm the video is playing out. So I might just let that roll.